Welcome to the Esoerotic Dark Feminine Magic Podcast. My name is Crimson, creatrix of Esoeroticism, and I help mystically minded folks awaken their dark feminine magic. Welcome to the Portal of Enchantment. Welcome, Tara Valkyrie, our in house astrologer here at Minx and Muse and in our membership community, the Multiverse. And for our Esoerotic Dark Feminine podcast, you're going to be joining us every month to give us the cosmic forecast. And so I'll let you introduce yourself, but for July 2025, what do we have to look forward to?
Ooh, hello everyone. July is wild. June and July have so much going on. The two big themes, though, for July are cosmic constipation and sovereignty is sacred.
Okay, whatever
Uh,
do we mean by this?
well, and don't worry, the constipation is just a buildup of our magic. So then we can just throw it forth into the universe and do amazing things. But what's happening right now is, we have a bunch of planets that either are about to change signs. The most notable one that we're going to talk about today is Uranus moving into Gemini. And then we have a bunch of planets that are about to station retrograde, which is a shifting in the energy. So that's where I'm getting the cosmic constipation. I promise I'm not just trying to make Uranus jokes.
We're not opposed to those.
Of course not. Remember, kids, never trust an astrologer that cannot joke about Uranus. But the big thing, kind of the first thing that comes to mind, because this starts, July 7th, the official ingress, as the fancy astrologers say, of Uranus into Gemini is on July 7th. We have already been seeing and feeling the energies of this movement. And just kind of a quick rundown, Uranus is the planet of evolution, of instability that leads to growth. It can be, yeah, instability leads to growth. And it can be really shocking. It can be upheaval that we weren't expecting. It can be upheaval that it's like, things were brewing and then suddenly the energy just kind of explodes. And a really notable kind of world event is what we're seeing unfold with Israel and Iran. That began to really escalate about 2 weeks ago. We were well within the energy of Uranus getting ready to move into Gemini. And then the other aspect is Uranus has been in Taurus for the last 7 years. And big things with Uranus and Taurus were how we view our natural resources, the earth, because Taurus is an earth sign. Also, how we view feminine energy. This was during the time that Roe v. Wade was overturned. This was during the time that we've had a lot of discussion around the rights of femme-presenting people. We also have had, big discussions around certain groups of people who maybe don't fit into the binary that has been perpetuated. There's been a lot of talk around trans rights. Another big thing with Uranus and Taurus has been the destabilization of world currencies, because Taurus deals in currency, finances. We've seen the rise of crypto. We've seen, the value of the dollar fluctuate. There's been a lot of things. So the most notable thing, though, was this past week. Throughout this summer, there's been the Senate bill that was presented by, I think, Utah Senator Mike Lee about he wanted to sell off public land for development. And one thing that kind of restored my faith in humanity was across the board. It did not matter whether you were Republican, Democrat, Independent, you have no label. Everyone was like, fuck no, we're not doing that. That is our land. It is sacred. We don't do that. And so that was recently struck down. And I thought that was so poignant in these last few days of Uranus and Taurus, of this upheaval against the established authority.
Yeah, because I always think of Uranus as like, it can be very unexpected change, but it can
Yes.
also lead to innovation,
Hmm.
and it doesn't have to be always so tragic, right? Like
Right.
you even think about the money system, you really saw crypto, a very innovative new technology,
Hmm.
come about in finances with it there. And I don't think we could have perceived that rise, or even the idea of like digital financial exchange has really innovated over the past. Because tell us, how long is Uranus usually within a sign? How long was it in
About
Taurus?
7 years. About 7 years, and then for it to come full circle is 84 years. Yeah.
Okay. So this is
Yeah.
going to be our one and all, unless you're, cryogenically preserved and living for a long time, this is going to be, or you're an infant right now listening to
Right.
this, welcome. But
Yes. Welcome to Earth.
yeah, this is really like our final experience of Uranus and Taurus, and it's going to be our final experience of Uranus now in Gemini. So,
Yeah, because
ooh,
the last time it
exciting.
was in Gemini was 1941 to 1949. And this time it's going to be, I know there's a lot of you who listen who are like, I need dates. So I'm just listing off dates.
Sure.
Enters Gemini July 7th, stays there until November 7th, retrogrades back into Taurus one final time. So we may be revisiting a couple of things that, are Taurus related during that time. And then it enters Gemini for reals, April 25th of 2026. And it stays there until May 22nd, 2033.
Oh,
So,
wow. So we'll get a little taste from now till November. We're going
mhm,
to dip back, deal with some final bullshit in Taurus,
yes.
and then we're going to go back in April of next year.
Mhm.
And what we're experiencing now will be the preview for
Yes.
what to expect from April until, ooh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is like a big deal, you guys.
That's why we're talking about it. It makes the bigger shifts as opposed to sometimes, okay, we see the moon in this, that's real
Mhm.
quick. The sun in this, that's 30 days, or
Right.
thereabout. And so, but
Yeah.
this is 7 years, that's a long time. So,
It is. And it's a long time, but then it's also a short enough time that we can kind of see things unfolding in real time versus say like for example Pluto in Capricorn, Pluto in Aquarius. We know Pluto is going to be in Aquarius for 20 years. Pluto in Capricorn, we can look back and be, we're like, oh, financial crisis, 2007, 2008, and we can like pinpoint things. But when we were actually in it, those of us who were alive during that time, we might not notice everyday stuff. Whereas Uranus is enough of a shocking energy and it's a short enough stay that we can be like, oh, that's going on right now. Like, oh, okay, this is innovative, this is happening. And especially with it being in Gemini, because Gemini is it's a local energy. In traditional astrology, it rules our everyday interactions with our local environment. Yeah, so
change in local communities. And, oh, I
Mhm.
like this. Go on. Sorry,
Yeah,
I got
yeah,
excited.
and it's huge shifts in our mindsets, how we think, technology, how we use technology, AI. That I mean, we're already in it. We're already in like those debates and discussions. And then communication. And I think the biggest thing that I am predicting, and kind of what I see is the decentralization of how we get our information. So one big example of that, shout out to my Houston peeps. A lot of us follow Space City weather. And that actually came about in 2017 after Harvey because there was so much misinformation and fear mongering from the major news networks. And after that happened, these weather dudes, they were meteorologists. They started this weather blog called Space City Weather. And anyone, and if you aren't on it in Houston, get on it, because they are looking at stuff in real time for the local area. And there have been times where they have completely different forecasts than the major weather networks, and they have been right. And so, anyway, I see that expanding locally whether it's weather, whether it's news, whatever it might be. And then there's also been this shift. I know during a lot of the protests in the last few weeks, there were local Instagram accounts or TikTok accounts that were based out of Austin or based out of a specific city, and they were updating with information. And so I see more of that. Um,
I
and
do
then also
feel
just,
like
yeah.
excuse me, I do feel like that idea of network news is
Yes.
really dying out with the boomers.
Yes. And yes, I think there's that. And then we're just over the misinformation and the because if you know I've for shits and grins, I will get on sometimes and I'll watch like 3 minutes because that's all I can handle of like Fox News, and then like 3 minutes of NBC, and just see like, okay, it's the same story, but like what do they grab onto?
And the same talking points, and it's not, and a lot of it isn't necessarily addressing what is more important to most people, which is local.
Yes.
Not to say that national news isn't important, but local news is just as important, and you do
Mhm.
find that you get more out of local news from resources that aren't need to stay alive by lots of ad dollars per se.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing is, and I think too, and this is part of the bigger picture because astrology is, you know, each planet is not just an entity unto itself. There's all these interactions, and what you were just saying about ad dollars sums it up. I think part of the bigger restructuring that we're going to see with Pluto and Aquarius, because Pluto and Aquarius and Gemini are air signs. That is information. That is ideas. We're, I think, finally realizing just how far in to a toxic side of capitalism, and we've been in it for a while. This is not new. But again, ad dollars, the fact that this is no longer about we're going to just tell you what's going on. This is we have to get viewers. How do we get viewers? We have to sensationalize this. We have to speak to the thing that's going to be important to our viewer set. And so going back to this more local um, structure, and kind of moving away from that sensationalism built on generating revenue and marketing. And then the other thing too is I think the shadow side of this, because again, these energies, there's a higher vibe, there's a lower vibe. The lower vibe, if anyone has, you know, has dealt with Gemini energy, it's the Loki principle, the chaos principle, the mischief. We could also potentially see an uptick in using technology to, you know, create chaos. Um, you know, I was reading an article about, you know, using AI and like the deep fake imagery to, you know, you take someone's face and you have them speaking about something and it's like something really horrible.
Yeah.
You're like, I support, you know, eating kittens or something, and it's like, I never said that, oh my god. And so what we may also see is an uptick in that kind of like propaganda type stuff. But then also that is going to create innovation in um, cybersecurity, fact checking, discernment. I also think, too, because of the rise of AI with Uranus and Gemini, we're going to have this rise in what I call human nuance. Just, and I know you and I have talked about this before about understanding nuance. Like, what are they saying? And then what is the actual message? And looking at the emotional intelligence, which, you know, that's very much about, we talk about that with the dark feminine energy, and the discernment. And so I think that's also going to be a forced adaptation or a forced reawakening because we inherently have that ability, but we've become so used to just being fed information that we haven't had to try.
Sarah, I always like to return to with the astrology, this challenge is coming. There's always going to be a challenge in the world. There is no Shangri-La where everything just works out and
Mhm.
there's not going to be anything that we need to learn to grow. And so with these challenges, what's the upside? How are we growing? How is this going to actually make for a better society? And I think you nailed it. This idea of technology, it's almost like not allowing technology to rule us. We still have to be the one to be in control, and that's going to require deeper humanity,
Yes.
emotional intelligence, the ability to understand nuance, the ability to communicate authentically. I cannot stand listening to AI generated crap.
Oh
And
my God, yeah.
what's it been, like 6 months? And I'm like, this book was written by AI. This newsletter was written by AI. And
Mhm.
being able to have that understanding of what a human tone is, I mean, I think that's a really positive thing that
It is.
we're going to be working through.
It is. And another thing that I see happening is and this is also not new, but there's been a lot of articles coming out about, young people don't have social skills anymore and blah blah blah. I what I think is a benefit to kind of our healing and our reworking of our relationship with technology is the emotional intelligence and the humanity, being able to cultivate our humanity and reconnect with others in that way is going to become a big deal in the workplace. um, Even like what we're doing now over Zoom. We are reading each other's body language. We are interpreting each other's tone. And so, the technology is not going away. We're not getting rid of, Zoom or video conferencing. We're not getting rid of AI either. But learning how, it's just like we're kind of repeating the Industrial Revolution, where I remember the story where we discovered radon and we're like, this is so cool, it glows. We're gonna paint ourselves with it. Obviously, that was a horrible idea. And then we had to realize, like, oh, okay, so we can use this in a safer manner that is better for us, but then also protects us. And we're at the let's paint ourselves with AI. And we're gonna have to learn because we're humans. We're a little dumb.
Yeah, you have to kind of touch the hot stove to realize we don't touch the hot stove. We're like little infants and little babies and learning how to deal with certain new technologies. It's the reality. But
Yeah.
yeah, maybe we could talk about, with Uranus going to Gemini
Mhm.
as us, conscious dark feminine mystics, what are some ways that we can consciously move through it, or what ways that we can prepare ourselves?
So one huge thing so Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius, and then it's moving into Gemini. And as I said earlier, that is air energy. So that is very comfortable, kind of in the cerebral energy, the mental energy. It's really easy to get up in our heads about things. And so, with being in the dark feminine, one of the huge things about the dark feminine is being embodied and connected to ourselves, connected to our knowing. And so, I think one huge thing is just taking time in daily ritual. And this is something that 5 minutes max. Yeah, it does, and I would love it to be longer. Like I love when you do the dance parties in the morning on the multiverse. I love one big thing is once you get started with the practice, it often expands. But just taking time to be present with yourself and whatever you do to come back to your body and connecting with that inner knowing it's so important. It's going to be so important. Just that discernment.
I mean,
Yeah.
I love that. I'm
Right.
all about embodiment and feeling.
Yeah.
And these practices that people think are silly or frivolous is what's going to actually save us
Mhm.
from turning into the robot machines ourselves.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
differentiator.
Yeah, it's so important. And that's the other thing that I do see, and I know later when we get into Neptune and Saturn's journeys this month, um what I also hope to see more of is specifically the reconnection and the reestablishment of the importance of this embodiment and tapping into the dark feminine, regardless of how you may identify, because we all have that energy. And it's just that it's that intuitive knowing that rationally I cannot explain why this is fake or why I don't like this or why I do like this. I just know that it is right and I'm going to trust that. And I see too with, Uranus moving into Gemini. Gemini is very much about that local connection, both externally and internally, of making that more of a mundane thing. Making that more of a common practice instead, because I know for a while, like part of what we had to unlearn was, the saying of like, okay, call me crazy, but, or I know this is woo woo, but, we've, a lot of us have, we've gotten away from that, thankfully. And I think now it's just bringing it into the everyday, and standing in that truth. Because one of the huge gifts of Uranus in a transit is it brings this flash in the pan psychic insight. It's like, I remember Steve Jobs talking about one aspect of the iPhone that like it was in a dream and it just came and that's very Uranus energy, you know. And it, even if you don't have an iPhone, the fact that Steve Jobs created the iPhone, that precipitated the Android coming about, that precipitated all these other technologies that are integrated. And it's this huge thing, but it comes through. But you have to be either in a state of relaxation, he was asleep dreaming, or you have to be able to just sit with yourself and be still.
Yeah, you can't be receptive if you're always moving and always constantly spiraling in some sense or
Yeah,
overthinking. And so I think that's really good advice is
yeah,
during this transit is make sure that you prioritize some kind of embodiment and grounding and even emotional processing
yeah,
practices to allow yourself to not be overrun
yes.
by what is absolutely going to be a big technological time.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing I will say too about this time is the taste we're getting now is a taste for what is going to be many big themes for 2026. And 2026, a lot of evolution coming, y'all. And I say this next thing with so much respect and love for my fellow Americans. What we are learning in the best sense with Uranus and Gemini is we are not special. And what I mean by that, so much love, is the conflict, the upheaval, what we are going through. One, I know there's a lot of weird shit going on here in our country right now. We still have so much privilege compared to a lot of the world. The fact that we can go outside and protest the government, and I know there's a lot going on. There's concern about being tracked by the FBI. Like, there's a lot of real risk out there. However, there are countries that if you did that today, you would be shot.
There's countries that if you went outside as a woman
Yes.
without full
Yeah,
coverage,
as you and I are dressed now. Yes.
from what I understand, now you can only expose one eye, not
Hmm.
both eyes.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I always just have such gratitude that there's, as a woman, there's so many places in the world still where it's extremely unsafe.
Yes.
And there's little to no any type of personal autonomy or personal power. And the fact that
Hmm.
you and I can have this conversation,
Yep.
even moments in time, I think of how grateful I am that I'm not moving through World War II or World War
Yeah.
One. Like those were really challenging moments in time. There are people
Yeah.
alive who have been through worse times than this.
Yes.
Because even in the last century, there's been more difficult times than this. So we always have to hold that perspective. So I like that
Yeah.
reminder.
Yes, because the kind of the final thing I'll say about Uranus and Gemini is one aspect of that is It's one way to literally translate Uranus and Gemini is bringing upheaval home or upheaval
Mhm.
coming home. So what I mean by that is what we're going through, this change, this evolution is not just happening in the US, it's happening globally. And there's a lot of things kind of similar to World War II in the sense that, prior to December 1941, we were like, we're just not going to get involved, you guys. So we're going to hang out here. Y'all fight. We'll send you some snacks, maybe, but we're just not getting involved. And then, it was literally brought home, and we had to get involved. And then when we realized later, we're like, oh wow, all of this stuff was going on. Um, and ideally, what it was designed to do was help us see a mirror to like all these problems in Europe, these human rights violations. We've got some issues back home. We started to do that. We didn't quite get there. um, so we're revisiting some of those things. But I think it's just important for
Yeah.
us to remember that we're not special. And actually, that's amazing because we're not alone in this. And as you so well pointed out, we have so many amazing tools and so much wisdom at our fingertips now to navigate a new outcome.
Yes, that's why it's so important that we do these astrology reports to me. As is above, so is below, as is within, so is without. It's all reflective, it's all a mirror. What happens in the cosmos is reflected down here on Earth, and how we're internally
Mm-hmm.
experiencing things is how we are externally experiencing things. And to be conscious and aware versus like fatalistic or violent towards potentially people who have different perspectives, or even just giving up on ourselves, to me that's not an option I want to take. I don't want to give up on myself. I don't want to give up on the world around. I want to feel really empowered and see there's a greater. So that's why I was like,
Yes.
what's the ultimate outcome? Well, if we make it through this, on the other side there's some wonderful rewards.
Yeah, there really are. And
And it
that
doesn't have to be treacherous moving through it
yeah,
also. And
exactly.
like I kind of just made it sound like once we make it through, like we have personal autonomy, like you said, with the embodiment, community, things like that. These are why these things are important. So it shouldn't have to feel like every day is tragic.
Yes.
You're giving perspective, like we're not special. This is something that humanity has been moving through, challenges like this since the dawn of time. Welcome
Yes.
to being a human.
Yes. Welcome to humanity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have so much that is amazing compared to our ancestors.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And just it's fascinating to me. I happen to be I somehow stumbled across this, but I somehow this article about the Montgomery bus boycott in the 1950s. And that was instrumental in getting the civil rights movement in motion. And they did not have the internet. Most people didn't have phones. It was just through word of mouth and then pamphlets. And these people organized, and they enacted this one movement that then rippled out and changed the course of history. And that's the thing. Yes, we still have a long way to go, and we did some amazing shit. Like
Yes.
we enacted. There are so many things. I know. My mom was telling me the other day because in 1974 was the first time that a woman could have her own bank account. And I'm like, oh, people, people in the multiverse, people listening now were alive during that time, and it blows my mind. And I love what you were saying about the personal sovereignty because that also goes into the other highlights for the month, which is Neptune and Saturn go retrograde in Aries this month.
And remind us, what's it mean when a planet goes retrograde? Everything just falls apart, right? Like we should just lock ourselves in a closet, right? According to
Under a
what
rock.
Yes, like you mentioned before, when people need attention, they get sensationalist and they get fear-based, and that's something that's going to arise is like when you start to notice that there's a lot of messaging around sensationalizing and real fear-mongering,
Yep.
note what it's not clickbait. What's the phrase for that? Fear bait or something like
Yeah,
that.
fear bait. There's rage bait too. Apparently,
Rage
there's a
bait.
bunch of different baits now. Yeah.
Yes, so fear bait, rage bait, these are real things that are
Hmm.
literally meant to get you to watch and get angry and like or dislike or and
Comments.
so
Yeah.
be aware of when you're listening to anything that is very fear-based. It's probably because they're trying to play to your emotions, which you should be managing through your embodiment practices, and they're trying to just essentially get your attention, which leads to money. So
Yeah, I was gonna say they want you to comment, they want you to share it. Spoiler alert, guys. If you see rage bait, they want you to get involved because it makes them money.
yeah, they want to
So
get you pissed off even if
mhm.
it's not
Yeah.
it's not grounded in truth or facts or reality. So, yeah, so we're just poking a little fun at all the people out there who are just like the retrogrades. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What is retrograde for reals for reals?
So for real, so in the sky, what's happening astronomically is it's like so we're all orbiting the sun. Apologies if there's any flat earthers listening. I disagree with you respectfully. Um,
I
so we're
don't
all
know if
orbiting.
the flat earthers follow us, but welcome if you do. Thank you for your open perspective.
Yeah. So what happens is, sometimes we are going to pass a planet, and because we're all orbiting at different speeds, and when we pass the planet, if we could see that planet, it looks like it's going backwards. And so that's when we have a retrograde period.
Kind of like when
And
you're in a car
yeah.
and it feels like you're moving, but you're not moving, the other car's moving, and then it's
Hmm.
like, wait, what? And so
Yeah.
it's just an illusion.
Yes, it's an illusion.
The planet
Um,
isn't backing that ass up.
yeah, it's backing the ass up. And then that's also creating this energetic shift. And there is basis in science for this. A lot of y'all know that I have a background in science, and so I'm always like nerding out. Um, but like for example, they figured out that the movement of Jupiter influences the weather here because of its gravitational pull. First law of thermodynamics, kids. But so, there's one, there's a visual representation. It looks like it's going backwards. We have this energetic shift. Um, and the gift in retrogrades is it's this pause for reflection and review because this energy invites us to direct ourselves more internally, to become more aware of what is going on internally. And it can cause upset if we are really in our ego, if we're really disconnected from our bodies, because we evolved on this planet. Our bodies are very connected to the Earth's energy and to the planetary energies. And so when we have these retrogrades, bottom line, it's an opportunity to slow down, to check in with yourself, to be like, okay, hey, I've charted this course. Does this feel good? Does this feel in alignment? Or am I performing? Am I doing this out of obligation? Am I doing this for external validation? And we have to, we humans are social creatures. External validation has a certain role. We've let it overtake us in a lot of ways. But checking in, like, are we living authentically in alignment with who we truly are, or our integrity? So the two big planets that are going retrograde this month, we have Neptune stations retrograde in Aries on July 4th. The overall theme with this is we are re-examining our dreams and our sovereignty within those. Oh.
Ooh, yes, because Neptune is associated with dreams and
Mhm.
fantasy and illusions sometimes. And
Yeah, and the cool thing about Neptune is so Neptune gets this reputation for creating delusion. The reality is, oftentimes, Neptune is presenting us with a truth that we were not ready to see. And sometimes, depending on what's going on in your natal chart, some people, I know clients have told me they're more aware of an uncomfortable truth when Neptune is direct. Other people have said they become more aware when it's retrograde. But bottom line is we are looking at the truth of situations.
Ooh.
And we're invited to look like, is this still in alignment with who I am? Or what have I refused to see? Looking at that without judgment. Because we all have reasons that we don't see a truth. We have reasons where we're like, no, I'm focused on this thing right now, or I'm not ready to deal with that. I'm in survival mode, whatever it may be. So the retrograde period is this gift of getting to sit with those dreams and looking at, Neptune and Aries. This is sovereign dreams, taking action on those. Spiritual sovereignty, spiritual action. Looking at, okay, where am I as I'm pursuing this dream? Collectively, we've been seeing Neptune and Aries with the protests, whether it's physical protests, whether it's online, whether you've been mailing letters to your senators, whether you've been signing petitions, things like that. Where are you acting on your beliefs? And then we also have Saturn that stations retrograde on July 12th in Aries. And that's also about taking responsibility for ourselves within whatever we are pursuing. And then looking at commitments, because Saturn is structure, commitments, reality. Neptune is the dream realm. Neptune and Saturn work together. Neptune comes up with the dream. Saturn's like, cool, let's bring this down into reality. With them both going retrograde in Aries, we are really assessing, where have I given away my power? Where am I refusing to take responsibility or avoiding something uncomfortable? And therefore, not only am I avoiding the discomfort, I'm also avoiding the reward. Because Saturn's about
Ooh.
rewards too. It's not just discipline.
Saturn always rewards. Saturn makes
Mhm.
you work for it, but Saturn forces you to create strong foundations. I always
Yes.
remember that because we think about Saturn delays, right? Like,
Hmm.
oh my goodness, it's not delaying you because it's a dick. It's delaying you because you need to create firmer roots.
Yeah.
And in which case, then it rewards because you can't topple over anymore. So I
Yeah.
love how that pertains to really like, are we pursuing our dreams? And are we like almost even moving with the Aries energy, moving into a new reality that we once dreamt about?
Yeah.
And are we building the foundations that are necessary for that dream to become reality? I like how the three of those play together.
Yeah, yeah, and a huge thing, because Neptune and Saturn are, outer planets. So when they go retrograde, it's not like Mercury. And Mercury's retrograde for 3 weeks because it's the closest to the sun. It's going really fast. Neptune and Saturn, it's several months. So for example, like Saturn is it's retrograde. It goes back into Pisces in September. So it's retrograde for several months, as is Neptune. And this is really looking at kind of going brick by brick almost, because Saturn is about legacy. And it is about, I want whatever you're building. One, Saturn's going to call us on our shit because it's like, you're better than this. You've been avoiding responsibility, discipline, whatever. You're better than this. You want more than this. I'm going to remind you that you do. And then we're going to go brick by brick because we want this thing to last. This is going to be hard work. It's worth it. And I feel like we're really going to feel this because as these current systems continue to shift, and as we have Uranus move into Gemini, the established messaging of fear, of give us your power, we'll take care of you, the toxic paternalism, the toxic patriarchal mindset, it's really going to call us to the carpet on, okay, we know the obvious ways we might give away our power. What are the little subtle ways that we don't always realize we're doing? And it also kind of going back to what you were saying about the making everything treacherous. I love that. Um, there's
Faints
going
on,
to be,
faints on the couch. Oh,
yeah,
I can't
oh,
handle it. Yes.
yes, I can't do anything. It's just the world is so terrible. Um, this retrograde, the gift, one of the most powerful gifts in this is coming back to everything that we do creates resonance. And I'm forgetting the full quote, but it talks about how like the energetic resonance of love, of higher vibration is so much more powerful than the resonance of fear or the resonance of hate. And one thing that's going to become apparent if we choose to take on this task is the way we're going to bring about this better reality is not just gathering in the thousands in the streets. That's great. But it's also choosing to connect with each other and choosing to do good things in our everyday environment. It's going to be going to teach the class at the studio. It's going to be you getting on and leading a class on the multiverse. It's going to be these little human interactions. And another big thing that I'm just going to remind people is so huge is literally getting out there and talking to other humans. Um, I had an experience the other day. I was driving around and there's political signs up and I'm just like, oh God, okay. I had to stop at this little local market and the houses all around have like these political signs up and I'm like, oh Lord. But anyway, I go in and I have this amazing conversation with like 5 people in there. And also, the other thing I will just, remind y'all with the astrology and with the humanity is it's kind of like the whole the squeaky wheel gets the grease. The worst people are getting the airtime on the major networks. The average person, even if they have a different political ideology than you do, they want the same things. They don't hate foreign people. They don't hate gay people. It's like they don't want to screw over the environment. They're operating with what they know.
And they have been buying into the fear that's
Yeah.
been fed to them by people trying to control them as well.
Yeah.
A lot of potentially you'll go to hell if you
Yeah.
marry someone of the same sex, or if you
Right.
you know like we're all in this soup together receiving different messages
Mm-hmm.
and all dealing with different fear-based programming. And
Yeah.
I think it's really, and I think this is a mature discussion to have because I know immediately some people just got triggered and were like, fuck you, no. But
Right.
the reality is we have to be open to
Mm-hmm.
having conversation and not being so divisive if we want the world to stop being so divisive. As is
Exactly.
within, so is without, and even working on our love for ourselves. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
RuPaul, how are you going to expect someone else to love you if you don't love yourself? And I mean, that's
Amen.
part of the magic is the resonance that you're speaking about. Like,
Yes.
if it feels really hard to extend that love to some people, maybe it's just extending that love to yourself to start off.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so true. And we've talked about this earlier. It's easy to say that, but really that is the medicine that we need. And that's a huge thing. Right now we're in Cancer season, which has been about, I talked a bit about it last podcast with, it's cardinal water. We're initiating this descent into our feelings. We've been in our emotional soup, but then we move into, I think, July 22nd. We move into Leo season. And that is about loving yourself. And I know that we love to dog Leos because we're like, oh yeah, they're really in love with themselves.
I love Leo energy
Me too. I'm
so
just
much.
like, yeah.
I do not get offended by people. There's a difference between being an egomaniac narcissist
Sure.
and someone who just exudes self-love, because you cannot, when you in truly love yourself, you want other people to experience that. And that's
That,
the difference between a
that,
narcissist and someone who just has a healthy capacity for self-love. When you have that inner confidence in
yeah,
oneself and love for oneself, it manifests in you want other people to experience the same. It doesn't come from a place of lack where like
right.
the egotistic person or the
Yeah.
narcissistic person, which I feel like is an overused term, but you get what I'm saying, is like it's really coming from a place of hurt, of internal hurt.
Right,
And
right.
really
Whereas like
believing.
high five Leo is like, hey, we're ruled by the sun, baby. There is plenty of light for everybody. Like
Right.
everyone come on out, it's a party. And that's the thing is this seasonal transition that we will experience this month with all of this, outer planet movement Cancer season is this invitation to go within to see, take our emotional health reading. Where have we been denying ourselves? I know in Moon Club, people call me rude because I make them like I ask deep questions.
Self-reflect.
I always ask myself too. But Cancer season has been about this dive into our emotional nurturing, our foundations. Cancer and Capricorn are big on foundations because so much of how we react and what we seek is based in our foundational experiences. It's based in these emotional patterns that we have. And so, if we've been aware during Cancer season, then when we realize, okay, this is where I need to nurture myself more. This is where I need to be kinder to myself. This is a cool thing about me that either I haven't emphasized enough or haven't explored. We get to Leo season, and that is like, turn it up, shine your light, because we need your light, your unique thing. And this is regardless whether or not you have Leo placements. If you have Leo placements, you really feel this. Even if you don't, this is a time everyone, come on out. And that's the thing too, and Leo is fixed fire. I said last month, we always have a cardinal season, then a fixed season, then a mutable season. So we had cardinal Cancer, cardinal's initiation. Fixed is about sustaining energy or creating a fierce momentum to shift something that isn't working. So if it's sustainable, we're going to focus on that. If it's something that's not sustainable, we are going to be changing course and we're never going back. And so that's, just with the sun being there and with, these planetary shifts, there's going to be a huge emphasis on where do we want to go and what do we need to celebrate about ourselves along the way.
Love that. Because you can think about, so this month in the multiverse in July 2025,
Mm-hmm.
our theme is the moon.
Mm-hmm.
And what we talk about with this energy, and the moon rules Cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And so we align it with the season. And so we just started Cancer season. So this
Yeah.
is our time to really go within,
Yes.
to delve into the shadows, to hone one's intuition. And the whole point of that is to not stay in the darkness. The
Yeah.
point is to then integrate it and then bring it back to light. And that's something we always have to remember with the dark feminine, is that the dark feminine isn't meant to just remain in the shadows. They're meant to alchemize the wisdom learned in the shadows and then illuminate it. And this is the perfect example. The sun rules Leo. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we move into Leo season, we want to shine in a way that's been informed and healed and reflected and aligned. And so the moon and the sun work together. It's
You
the
do.
cycle of the day and night. And so
Mm-hmm.
one is not better than the other, but one is incomplete without the other.
It's so true. Yeah. And you can't, and I've talked about this in natal chart night, and a huge thing, I know in Western astrology, we really focus on the sun, but the reality is in our charts, our moon, I would argue that our moon holds all the power. If our moon is not happy, the rest of our chart cannot function. And I know what happens. I know you're a Cancer. I'm a Pisces. We're water babies. You precede Leo. I precede Aries. And what often happens is people love the fire seasons because it's like, yeah, get out there, do your thing. But in reality, you cannot burn as bright unless you are doing the work in the water season. Um, and that's the thing is you have to go within, and it makes me think of you know a lot of times we get stuck on either avoiding the shadow or we try to live there, and the reality is like, yeah, we have to have that darkness. And I love what you said about alchemizing. There's a quote that it makes me think of. It's, you may not have had a choice in the wounding, but you do have a choice in the healing.
And no one can heal it but you.
Exactly. And it's your
And
responsibility. Yeah.
sorry, I interrupted. Oh, excuse me.
No, no, it's all good.
I
Has
just knocked my microphone. I got so excited.
yes.
Um,
But yeah, yeah, and I think it's, and that's, I love what you were talking about with the link between the moon and the sun,
mhm.
because we have to, and the moon, I mean, in astrology, that represents our emotional foundation. It can represent our time in the womb and our early experiences, and those shape how we navigate the world. And so in order to really embody the sun, regardless of whether you're a Leo or have Leo placements, you have to know your moon. You have to be able to alchemize that energy to bring it out into the sun.
and
And
I
yeah.
and for those who are like, I don't know really what these placements are like in my chart, we do this in our virtual membership. Tara teaches two monthly classes. One is Moon Club, where we talk deeper about the kind of this discussion, but at a more nuanced level, and then
Mhm.
the natal chart night. So I'm assuming this month we're going to talk about our moon placements.
We are.
No,
We
that's a good
are.
way to learn. And I love how in this podcast we literally just spoke about um, the holistic messaging behind astrology. So we talked about the water feeding
Hmm.
the sun and how we need both of them. And we talked about how with the air, we need the earth. So with all of the Gemini chatter
Hmm.
and technology and headiness, we need to earth and ground and embody. And
Yes.
with all of the sun shining, that Leo energy that we're going to step into at the end of the month, we need to first make sure that we tap into our water, our internal intuitive reflective self. So they all work together. This is why no sign is better than the other. And
Mhm.
this is why no time leaves us completely helpless, because there's always a support that we can lean into when we understand like the holistic nature of astrology and the elements.
Yes. And I love, that's so important. I love that. Because that's also too kind of going back to the very beginning when we talk about the innovations and information. Um, One, we're doing what humans do. We are existing on this ever-changing, volatile, beautiful little planet. We got challenges, and we have more information, more tools, and more power at our disposal than we ever have in the history of our species. And it just, I honestly, I'm excited to be alive right now. I'm excited to, uh, and to have a voice in shaping the reality as we're going forward. And yeah, I think too, I know, yeah, we've got three more weeks of Cancer season.
Yeah.
Yeah, June was so wild. I was like forgetting what day it was. I had to put reminders on my phone.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's just starting, and I agree with you. And to me, this is what inspires me to do these mystical studies and to identify as a witch and to do the dark feminine work because it gives you that personal power. It helps you recognize the potentiality, really, of what we can manifest or magnetize in the world, resonate with, and then also like doing it in pleasure doesn't have to be arduous. Like, and
Yeah.
so I'm so grateful to have you as a voice for that. I think especially some of our younger listeners who potentially haven't lived through as much turmoil as potentially some of our older listeners who are like,
Yeah.
this is old hat, this is being human. You know, we're always going to be going through things, and recognizing these practices, these tools aren't just here for when you're feeling good. I had someone, I was talking to a friend, and she was like, I just, I'm going through it, and it's just life is hard right now. I can't do my practices. And I was like, this is when you literally need your practices. These silly practices, your embodiment, your mystical practices, your magic, whatever that looks like to you. We're not saying there's one right thing to be participating in, but you have to be doing something, especially in times that feel more challenging. That's
Yes.
the worst time to just stare at a screen and spiral.
Oh
Literally
yeah.
the worst time. So if you're finding that you're doing that, maybe that it's a time to get yourself off. Well, let me ask. I'm
Hmm.
hearing people predicting an ending of social media because of this Uranus Gemini transit, that they could really perceive that it's a time where social media goes away.
You know, I definitely see it changing. Like I could see the eventual, death of Facebook or something. Because I know that there's, certain age demographics, like I think like Facebook is like the boomer,
Yeah.
the older, I'm just gonna out myself as an elder millennial. I'm like Instagram. I admit I don't understand TikTok. I'm trying. It just, I what I see potentially is a changing in the way we use it. I don't see it completely going away.
I think that that's necessary because I think that it's stealing a lot of people's peace, and it's stealing a
Yes.
lot of people's emotional space and headspace, and it's not healthy. And I think potentially that's what we have to look forward to, is learning to have healthier relationships with it and to engage with it in a more conscious way. So maybe that's what it's going to grant us, which would be
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah. What I mean, and so what I would like to see, this is an interpretation, and I'm just going to own this, what I would like to see. I would love to see the death of the algorithm
Yeah.
and the death of because I'm on Blue Sky, and I'm trying to train myself to like to post stuff on there. And one huge difference between say like Instagram and Blue Sky is there's not ads on Blue Sky.
Okay.
So I'll get on there, I'll post, and then I might scroll and see like, oh, another performer friend has posted pictures of their show. I'm gonna like that. I'm gonna comment on, oh, that looks awesome. A photographer posted, a picture of a leaf or whatever. And so it's like I can get on there and I can connect with people I care about, but I'm not being bombarded with like, buy this witchy
Yeah.
thing. Because Instagram has, they're like, we know what you like. We're
We
gonna
know
send
what
you.
you're gonna buy. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's also the rage bait that, will pop up sometimes. And I know
Yeah.
not to click on that, but it's still annoying. Like I can still feel that like spike in
Yeah.
adrenaline, cortisol when I see the thing. I'm like, I'm not gonna click on that. So I think and it's a slippery slope because I was reading about a thing that at first I was like, "Oh, this is a good idea," because there was laws around when to allow like minors to get on social media. And on the one hand, I'm like, "Okay, yeah, like, you and I have talked about how we are concerned for especially like young girls, but also just young people about the body image issues that happen that are compounded because when we're young, you and I have talked about just the body image issues we had
And we
as
didn't
young.
even have social media to be screaming in our face. We had like a monthly teen magazine that came out. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I would have struggled so much. I am so grateful
Oh yeah,
I didn't
same.
have that. Yeah.
Same. And it's what we're gonna have to figure out is, I saw these proposals about further restrictions for young people, but then I'm like, okay, but then where is that line? Because on the one hand, like, yeah, I worry about young people, but then some of those things could bleed into controlling. It's like how they have curbed a lot of the online sex worker platforms under the guise of we're trying to protect people, when in
Yeah.
reality,
It's
they're
just,
yeah,
it's like more laws and regulations aren't always better.
exactly.
It could absolutely start bleeding into like our sovereignty and our ability to
Mhm.
have a voice. I can't go live on Instagram. I haven't been able to. I was for a year.
Yeah, well, that's
So
right.
I've been in Instagram jail on my personal and the studio account for a year. It doesn't end until next August,
Oh my gosh.
and it's because I posted and literally they tell you which one it was, and I said you want to feel sexy outside of sex. You want to feel sexy at the grocery store. You want to see, and that's literally this reel that I made. And that's what got me for a year. So I'm like, I'm pretty sure this isn't like what the law was intended for. This is obviously a very empowered message. But
Yes.
anyway, there's that. And then there's also look at what happens in this, in this country. We can't drink until we're 21. And so when we turn 21, all of a sudden we don't know how to drink responsibly. We're a hot mess where it's like
Right.
in Europe and other countries, they've been drinking since whatever. And so they've learned
Yeah.
to come up in a way that's healthy where they're
Hmm.
like, or maybe not healthy, but like, it's not so much of okay, I'm a grown ass person and I don't know how to deal with something that's going to be my reality. And so you have to worry
Yeah.
about that if you just cut it off from young people. And then all of a sudden they have no education or growth with
Right.
it. So, I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. Look at us. We started this podcast talking about nuance. We're ending talking about nuance and how
Right.
this is so important that the world is not black and white. There is not one right answer and one wrong answer. We'd like to think that loving thy neighbor and
Mhm.
do as thy will, if it harms none, are things that I would like to consider being like a universal truth. But we have to be nuanced, and I think
Yeah.
potentially this Uranus and Gemini could really help us step into
Yes.
that.
Yes, we're gonna be presented with a lot of opportunity to discuss nuance. It's like another example. I remember it keeps cropping up, but there's the parents who are trying to ban books, and it's like, okay, I remember I had certain books that my parents, I can't remember the name of the title. There were these vampire sex books that were amazing. Anyway, my older cousin gave me one. My mom caught me with it. I was like 13, and she was like, "You're too young for this." And so
And
anyway,
then look how you turned out. No, I'm just kidding. Go
look, now I'm a witch. Oh my god! And I pole dance and I talk
on.
to animals.
You're a
Yeah.
burlesque dancer. Oh my gosh.
My mom, okay, she was like, you have to wait till you're 16 to be able to read this. And okay, that was her prerogative. I was her daughter, blah blah. But it never occurred to my mom to be like, I have to go to the library now and make sure
Right.
no one's 13-year-old can read this. Because I remember like,
And
Mom, yeah, it's like I remember saying like, Mom's, my friend at school can read it, and she's like, well, she's not my
that's
daughter.
right.
Yeah.
That's super fair. Yes, this idea that your one perspective shouldn't
Right.
have to, the idea that one religious or moral compass shouldn't be law. The idea, I always use the example, I don't like pot. I don't like
Right.
being around it. It's not my thing. Yes, I've tried different strains. I don't fucking like it.
Yeah.
I still think it should be legal. I don't
Mhm.
care whatever anyone else does. And we, being able to have that understanding of like your moral compass shouldn't be forced on other people or your personal views. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh. Okay, we're getting a little wild.
We're getting
So let's reel it back in. Come join us in the multiverse if you want to get real,
yes.
real nuance. We have some deep talks over there. But
Hmm.
this was really helpful. And, I think if nothing else, it's Cancer season, especially
Yeah.
if you're listening to this in the beginning of, well, if you are listening to this in the first part of June,
Hmm.
of any year. But
Hmm.
yes, maybe this led you to reflect on something and to potentially do some journaling, do some reflection. And now that you have the information of some of the astrology that's going to be affecting us on a bigger level, Tara and I talked about only talking about three of the most powerful astrological influences, or we'd be here for 3 hours. And so when we come back in August, we'll talk about some different astrology happening then. But hopefully this was a lot to think about and to empower of really
Hmm.
how we take the cosmic influence and we use it in a conscious, empowered way to help us grow and expand and to step into a more magical world.
Yes. Yes. Love that.
What is your July leaving message for all of the listeners?
I would say the pattern may not have started with us, yet we have the power to shift it.
There you go.
That's my one sentence takeaway. That's what
There you
everything
go.
comes down to.
Yeah, and as you said, you're not responsible for your traumas,
Hmm.
but you're the only one that can address them.
Yeah.
Um, and heal them for yourself and integrate them for yourself. So I love this.
Mhm.
You really did talk. We really did hit on the main topics,
Yeah.
which was the sovereignty and the magical constipation. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I did. I wasn't just trying to make a Uranus joke, you guys. The cosmic constipation is just. It feels like, especially right now, it feels like there's all this stuff kind of coming up, and we're like, what do I do with this? And yeah, because it can feel like we're in. The cool thing is, it feels like we're getting all this wisdom, but we
yeah,
don't quite know what to do with it just yet. There's still a lot of liminal energy. And so that can be frustrating if you're not used to giving yourself time to pause.
yeah. And
Um,
Cancer is the liminal season, and then Leo is the active season. So potentially you'll be moving through this over the next
yeah.
month. So thank you for guiding us through this. And thank you everyone for watching or for listening. Tara, we're going to be having you every month. And I really appreciate
Exciting.
having these longer conversations with you
Hmm.
versus Tara used to do short ones on social media. This is a way that social media is changing.
Hmm.
We're recognizing that longer format for more nuanced conversations serves people with
Hmm.
this kind of information. So thank you for doing this, and I cannot wait to experience this astro energy from a more informed perspective and
Yeah.
to catch up back in August and see what happened and see where we go from there.
Yeah.
Yay, well thank you for joining, Tara, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thank y'all.
Bye.
Bye. Love yourselves, love each other, and happy stargazing.
Thank you for joining. Follow me on Instagram at crimson.minx and visit esoerotic.com to learn to live more fully and unapologetically in your magnetic power, sensual pleasure, and unlimited creative potential.